Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hey, and welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast. Jessica Donovan here. Now, today I want to talk about the pesky little creatures that are dust mites. These little creatures can cause absolute havoc for so many children, and I don't think it's talked about enough. We recently ran a Eczema and Allergies masterclass. We're going to be hosting that masterclass again in March, so look out for details of that coming soon. And there were quite a few people that wanted more information about environmental allergies and dust mite allergies particularly. So I know there's probably people listening that have got kids who have actually been diagnosed with a dust mite allergy. But there's a whole heap of other people whose kids have issues with dust mites, whether it's an allergy or a sensitivity, and you may have overlooked it. So, we see parents all the time, we support parents all the time with things like eczema and allergy symptoms. And often these parents have tried a lot of dietary changes. They might have cut out dairy or gluten or sugar. They may be, familiar or aware of, things like pollens and grasses potentially setting their kids off. But there's a real lack of understanding when it comes to dust mites. And I think it is partly because they can affect kids all year round. So when our kids are reacting to pollens and grasses in the springtime, obviously it becomes really obvious that, hay fever is an issue and it's those seasonal allergies that they're struggling with. It's harder to pick with dust mites because they are present all year round. So I think that that's one of the big reasons that they are overlooked as a problem. So I want to talk today about how to recognize if dust mites could be contributing to your kids' allergies and eczema as well. So many eczema kids are triggered or sensitive or allergic to dust mites, and it can be causing lots of issues with their skin. And no matter what changes you make, to diet and even, supplements and improving that allergy tolerance, that'll definitely helps. But if there's still that ongoing exposure to the trigger, that needs to be addressed as well. So I want to also share some fun facts, some gross facts about dust mites, what you can do to reduce your child's exposure to dust mites. So this is obviously important if you know they have an issue, and it can be a really good way to find out if they do have an issue. So I'm going to share some tips on that. And then we're also going to be talking about why it's important to understand that dust mites themselves aren't actually the root problem or the underlying problem. So let's get stuck in. So dust mites are microscopic organisms. You cannot see them with the naked eye, but they are, they're translucent, microscopic creatures. They have a life expectancy of between 2 and 3 months. They don't have eyes and they can't drink. Instead, they rely on absorbing water from the air. And they live in places like mattresses, pillows, bedding, carpets, soft toys, upholstered furniture. They thrive in warm, humid environments, and they feed on dead skin cells, which we all naturally shed every day. So they are present in every home, regardless of how clean your home is. Yes, we can do things to reduce dust mites, but it's not about hygiene or cleanliness, that they are present and, normal in every home. Your child's mattress and your mattress may contain hundreds of thousands, even millions of dust mites. Mattresses provide the perfect environment for dust mites. The warmth, the humidity, and that constant supply of skin cells. And let's think about the fact that your child spends 8 to 12 hours a night in direct contact with that environment. So that's where it can become really, problematic. It's not the dust mites themselves that cause the reaction or, are problematic in terms of allergies. It's their waste, which is a pretty gross fact to be thinking about. So dust mites produce microscopic waste particles that become airborne and settle in bedding and fabrics. And these waste products can be inhaled, they come in contact with the skin, and they trigger immune reactions in sensitive children. Every person sheds enough skin cells to feed around 1 million dust mites every single day. It's normal. It happens in every home. It's simply part of being human. But we are, as humans, a massive food source to these dust mites. We can feed millions of dust mites every day with the skin that we naturally shed. How crazy is that? Dust mites produce around 40 trillion fecal pellets in your mattress every 3 months. I told you this was going to be really gross. I'm really grossed. I don't get grossed out by these sorts of things very easily. But, to think about these creatures that we're living, side by side with is pretty crazy, isn't it? And I think I already said this, but they thrive in humid environments. So they actually cannot survive in dry climates with a relative humidity below 40 degrees. So if you live in a humid, hot environment, that is where dust mites thrive. They don't bite, they don't spread disease, they don't cause any health problems unless you are allergic or sensitive to them. And if your child is sensitive to them, these are some of the signs and symptoms you might see. There's those skin-related signs. So eczema, particularly eczema that flares overnight or in the morning, eczema that affects the face, neck, or any sort of exposed area when a child is sleeping. And another key is eczema that doesn't fully improve despite dietary changes. We know there are lots of foods that trigger or contribute to eczema in certain kids, and that can look different for each child. And if dietary changes aren't making a difference, then, looking at those environmental triggers, such as dust mites, is really important. Allergy-related signs that your child may be having a problem or may be allergic or sensitive to dust mites are things like blocked nose, congestion, sneezing, particularly through the night or in the morning, itchy eyes or nose, chronic nasal congestion. And again, particularly in the morning when they've been on that mattress all night. So kids with dust mite allergy are often pretty grumpy, irritable, congested, blocked up, itchy in the mornings. So if that sounds like your child, dust mites are worth exploring. There's those respiratory signs as well: asthma, nighttime coughing, mouth breathing, snoring can all be contributed to dust mite allergy as well. And it's looking for those, the times of the symptoms as well. So symptoms that are worse overnight or first thing in the morning, symptoms that are worse at home compared to outdoors. So some families might notice that when they go camping or when their kids are spending more time outside, they're less symptomatic. And that's a real sign because obviously those dust mites are more present within an indoor environment. And symptoms that are worse in winter as well. And that's due to that increased indoor exposure. Most kids are spending more time indoors in winter. So it's interesting. Dust mites themselves peak in the summer, in the late summer. But what you might notice with your child is that their symptoms may peak in the winter, particularly if they are spending more time in the winter. So looking at those, when your child's symptoms are occurring can be a clue to whether dust mites are contributing to their symptoms as well. So how do we reduce that exposure? As I said, we want to make sure that we're reducing exposure to dust mites at the same time as improving our child's, immune regulation and immune tolerance. So both of those things, sort of need to happen side by side to get some really good results in terms of reducing those symptoms. So one thing you can do, like probably the most effective thing you can do, is use dust mite covers on mattresses and pillows, because that creates that barrier between your child and the dust mites that might be living in their mattress and their pillow. We want to wash bedding regularly. Weekly is great if we can do that. Washing in hot water is most effective when it comes to reducing exposure to the waste products from the dust mites. So at least 60 degrees Celsius or higher is recommended if you know your child has dust mite issues. And reduce dust collecting items in the bedroom can really help as well. So think of anything that's soft. Dust mites are going to love all of those soft furnishings, curtains, carpet, bedding, cushions. So reducing things like soft toys, lots of bedding, carpets where possible. I know we've had, clients that we've worked with that have ripped up carpets in bedrooms, and that's made a big difference to their child. And I know that's not always possible. But, things like soft toys, washing those in hot water regularly, vacuuming using a HEPA vacuum cleaner. So a HEPA filter on your vacuum cleaner is essential if your child has issues with dust mites. And vacuuming the carpets, vacuuming the mattress once a week can make a big difference as well. Vacuuming under the bed. Really thorough vacuuming can help a lot. And improve ventilation where possible as well. So fresh air, airflow can reduce those indoor allergens generally, and particularly dust mites as well. So these strategies can really make a significant difference in reducing the symptom triggers. But this does lead to an even more important point, and that is that dust mites aren't the real root cause or issue. Dust mites are a trigger. And we've been talking about this more and more. I think it's important for people to understand getting rid of or reducing the load of dust mites is not the be-all and end-all when it comes to dust mite allergies and sensitivities. Remember, your child is going to be exposed to dust mites. But dust mites exist in almost every home, but not all kids have eczema or allergy symptoms related to those dust mites. If you think about two children sleeping in exactly the same room, one is reactive, one's waking up with itchy skin, blocked nose, congestion, and the other one is waking up absolutely fine. So this is a good example of the fact that it's not the dust mites that are the problem. It is how the immune system is reacting to those dust mites. When the immune system is balanced and tolerant, it doesn't react to the dust mites. But when the immune system is dysregulated, it reacts to things like dust mites that shouldn't be a threat. As I said, dust mites aren't dangerous. They don't pose a health risk unless we have sensitivities and intolerances to them. And that comes down to each person's individual body. They're a normal part of our environment. And the real issue is really when the immune system has become overly sensitive and reactive. So this is why reducing exposure helps, and it's an important part of the picture, but it doesn't fully resolve the problem because that underlying immune imbalance is still present. And this is why, digging deeper and looking into that immune dysregulation, how can we regulate that immune system to make it less reactive and less on high alert all the time? The gut microbiome is key with this allergy tolerance and immune regulation. So when a child's gut microbiome is out of whack or lacks diversity, which so many kids do these days because of our, Western diet and lifestyle, that contributes to that immune dysregulation. And then there's also things like skin barrier integrity, so how healthy that is, and this is particularly relevant for those kids with eczema, and that overall chronic inflammation picture in any particular child is really important to look at as well. Many kids with issues, allergies, sensitivities to dust mites will also have other environmental triggers that are, causing symptoms as well. And when we address those drivers, that immune regulation, the gut microbiome, then that's going to help with all of those, reducing, how detrimental all of those triggers are for any particular child. So I hope this has helped you with some practical ways to either reduce that exposure to dust mites for your child, or maybe it's been an insight into, maybe dust mites are an issue for my child. As I said, we see dust mites being an issue in a lot of kids with eczema, with asthma, with allergy, congestion, respiratory type symptoms as well. So I'm going to be following this episode up with talking about some, food intolerances and histamine as well. And as I said, we're going to be running our eczema and allergy masterclass again in March. Stay tuned for that. We're going, as soon as we, start promoting that and start signing people up, I will let you know here on the podcast. Please reach out to us if you have any questions or to share any insights that you've had from this episode. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us at support@naturalsuperkids.com or send us a message on Instagram. We always love hearing from our podcast listeners. I hope it's been helpful for you today. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.